Sydney Watson knows this. I know she knows this. She's a disgusting, dishonest piece of shit, as are they both. They both know these things. They just hate trans people. They just hate trans people. That's all it is. That's all it ever will be. They don't care about women. They just hate trans people. Okay, I'm a little bit high once again, not too high, mind you, but a little bit. And I just finished up a debate, so my brain is a little bit not firing on all cylinders. Nonetheless, I am going to try to give the people what they want. The juice. The juice. Australia caves to trans insanity featuring Sydney Watson. I've heard that name. That is a name that I've definitely heard, and it's not in a good way. Okay, let's see what's going on here.
As a woman watching all of this unfold, I'm actually very distressed because I can see how much we are accelerating with this stupidity.
Australia is
How high? I'm 186. How high? Like 3 feet. You're all so funny.
losing its mind. A huge update
Like
on
this
that
much.
city council free speech case, and a truly bloodthirsty communist TikTok.
Oh boy. Ah, loud. Don't like how loud that was.
All this and so much more is coming up on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where I take on the
There's something up. Yeah, never
craziest
mind.
ideas from
Not gonna
across
comment
the
on his
internet and
looks.
across our politics, all from a center-right, independent
I'm trying to be better
perspective.
about that.
If you're new here, please do consider subscribing and sticking around, and do comment with your thoughts as we go along. I do pick a few comments to respond to in every episode, and I do read the comments, so I always love to hear your thoughts. And if you leave your comment with a super chat, I'll definitely read it on the next show. Reminder, guys, you can check out the merch that I just
Why does he look like that? I'm telling you, there's something about like evil people. There is something. It's very intense. Yes, thank you. It is very intense.
dropped. Your math isn't mathing, your Delulu is showing,
Clearly
and
been
more
mewing.
at the link in the description. And now, let's get into our first topic for today, which is a truly insane story out of Australia that we've got to break
Okay.
down with the
What's
help
the
of our
story? Let's
friend,
go.
YouTuber,
Insane
and Aussie
story.
political commentator, Sydney Watson. So, Sydney, some insane stuff is going down in your homeland, down in Australia. We've got to talk about a case, Tickle versus Giggle, about a trans
Whoever carved this dude's face forgot to sand down the edges. Stop! You heathens!
woman who
How
took to
dare
the
you
courts
take the
to try to
low-hanging
force their
fruit.
way onto a female-only app. I know you have a lot of thoughts on this. First,
Ad
I gotta play
homs.
you some
Chat's full of
swooning
ad
coverage
homs.
that really paints Tickle out to be this heroine, I guess you'd have to say, in their coverage. Take a listen to this from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, ABC.
It's a fight Roxanne Tickle says stole 3 years of her life.
There is so much hate and bile cast on trans and gender diverse people simply because of who we are.
In 2021, she joined the women-only social networking app Giggle, submitting a selfie assessed by AI to be
Oh, I heard about this. The transphobes lost their little dating app, right? Because it was transphobic as shit. Yeah, go f yourself.
female. But that was later manually overridden, and her account was restricted. Ms. Tickle sued
Oh.
the app's founder, Sal
Wait,
Grover.
the AI clocked her as female?
In 2021, she joined the women-only social networking app Giggle, submitting a selfie assessed by AI to be female. But that was later manually
Yeah, she was assessed by AI. Yeah, the thing that they trusted. Sorry, hey, that's an L on you guys' part. Turns out AI ain't as smart as you think.
overridden, and her
Call it
account
AI
was restricted.
AS
Ms. Tickle sued the app's
artificial
founder,
stupidity.
Sal Grover, claiming discrimination on the
was a
basis
good
of
one.
gender identity. She has a birth certificate stating her gender
That
as
it is.
female and has undergone gender-affirming surgery. Giggle's legal team considered sex to mean the sex of a person at birth. Today, a judge said those arguments were contrary to 30 years of precedent.
Let's
Those
go!
cases established that in its ordinary meaning, sex is changeable.
Unfortunately, it is
True.
the judgment we anticipated, and the fight for women's rights in Australia
Get
continues.
wrecked, get wrecked,
The judge
get
found
wrecked.
there had been indirect
That's not women's
gen-
rights. If you're actually concerned about women's rights, go after actual things that are happening, like restriction on abortion access. Like go after, like, there's so many different women's rights causes you can fight for. You know, like treatment in healthcare settings. You know how terribly women get treated in healthcare settings a lot of the time? Like, fight for that. You know, fight for proper punishment of doctors that don't treat women correctly. You know, anything besides this stupidity.
Gender identity discrimination against Roxanne Tickle because she was excluded from using the app after Giggle staff, in their view, determined she did not look sufficiently female.
I brought my case to show trans people that you can be brave.
I would love for somebody to describe to me in great detail how she does not look female. You know? Like, what are you going to say? That she's too ugly? Or something? Like that's all that you have.
And that you can stand up for yourself.
I think that this judgment sends the message that we want an
What about this person? How do we know this person's female, huh? Huh? How do you know?
inclusive society in which all can participate, and that includes trans people as well as people who have a range of sexual orientations.
The judge declined to order an apology as requested, saying it would be devoid of sincerity. For now, the app remains
Get wrecked,
offline.
dude. The judge was like, "Oh, you want an apology?" He's talking about the judge that like passed down this one, right? And they were like demanding an apology from him, and he's like, "Nah, f that."
ABC News, Sydney.
So, Sydney, is Roxanne Tickle the heroine of this story?
Yes.
Well, apparently, according to the ABC, yeah.
Queen, slay queen.
I don't know how they could have made that broadcast and put that little bit together seriously and
wait, there was nothing wrong with
the way
it
that they did with a straight face. But it goes to show. So I think that one of the things
Why not? Why not? I would love to know why not.
that's really, really depressing about any situation that unfolds like this that pertains to a trans-identified male who goes into female spaces and then complains when women are not interested in having that trans-identified male there, is that they when women are not interested in having that
This is not a real problem. Like, this doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And when it does, guess what? It's usually somebody clocking somebody else as trans, and usually that person is actually cis. It's just like this whole ideology is poisoning the brains of people all over the country.
Trans-identified male there.
All
is
over the
that
world.
They will rally all
Apparently.
these additional women around them. And I don't understand how these women are incapable of understanding the viewpoint of the women who are cross about this. Like, they act as if you have some sort of massive, I don't know, mental issue, that you're not that clever, that you're just a bigot, that you're just all these things. And it's like, no, we want to protect our female spaces. We want to, you know, make sure that our female spaces are for females. Like,
there's no data that suggests that trans people are a threat to women in any capacity. None. Not in any significant capacity.
I don't know why this is
They're
so
not a
complicated
disproportional
for
threat.
them.
It's just transphobia.
Yeah, it is weird because you'd think that they'd understand. So the point of this app, guys, Giggle, is
there's not like a epidemic of like men dressing up as women and going into women's spaces and hurting them. It's simply not happening. Trans women are women.
simply to be for female-only connections and groups and spaces, right? And obviously a trans woman is somebody who is biologically male. Now, I
mean, they could be. They could also biologically have transitioned to female through medical practice, because that's the thing that we can do now. It's pretty cool.
I have so many problems with this story that I struggle to even know where to begin. But one of them is like, why is this trans person trying to force their way into a space they're not wanted? That's something from...
It's not even just a space. It's just being provided the same rights as other women. You know, they want to be a woman. She wants to be a woman. Like, what's wrong with that? Cis women want to be women, and they're like, nobody questions them. Okay? Like, just treat her like a woman.
From within the LGBT community, I've never understood.
You could use exactly the same argument for race, by the way. I just don't understand why black people would want to be forcing their way into a space they're not welcome in. It's like, okay, let's just reinstitute all the whites-only establishments, right? The exact same logic.
Understood the gay couple that went and hounded that Christian baker and said, "You will bake me a wedding cake."
Oh, so we're doing some homophobia too.
I don't want someone to bake a wedding cake who doesn't believe in my wedding for me. And I also wouldn't want to be in a space that I'm not welcomed in, or that the owners tried to create specifically not for me.
Okay, whites only spaces. Good job.
That's a mentality that I don't understand, and I don't understand why people are so quick to use...
Well, see, I only serve wedding cakes to white people. I don't serve wedding cakes to interracial couples. That's not a thing that I do here. You know, I'm protected by my religious freedom to do that, right? That's how discrimination spreads. That's how intolerance spreads. You cannot tolerate intolerance in a tolerant society. You can't do it. It spreads like a disease.
Someone engaging in that kind of behavior as some sort of brave or heroic figure when they're essentially just pestering other people.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I think the frustration that I had in this case was listening to the judge. I don't know if you watched the judge's full remarks, but there were so many things that the judge said in this case that were just certifiably wrong.
I'd love to know.
And it was so bizarre to listen to him reference existing legislation or, you know, try to interpret what already existed and then come to the conclusion that sex is changeable. That basically he sort of chastised the giggle side of things and basically called them out because they don't consider Roxanne Tickle a woman or female. Oh, and then I'm sure that you've come into contact with this, but one of the things that he said.
No, the judge did recognize Tickle as a woman, right?
Called them out. Sex is changeable. Try to interpret what already existed, and then come to the conclusion that sex is giggle side of things, and basically called them out because they don't consider Roxanne Tickle a woman.
I don't understand. She's saying that the judge didn't consider Roxanne Tickle a woman, but the judge ruled in favor of Roxanne. I don't understand.
Or female. Oh, and then I'm sure that you've come into contact with this, but one of the things that he said was that Roxanne Tickle is in fact a woman because it's designated on Roxanne Tickle's birth certificate. There's an F there, which apparently means that now you're also female. But I mean, forget the biology of the situation. Forget the fact that Roxanne Tickle has in every.
If she was if she was medically transitioning, then yes, she could align closer to female than male. Yes.
Way, shape, and form.
And also, like, we correlate. Okay, so there's zero reason at all for the government to know what your sex organs are. Zero. That is an arbitrary thing, an arbitrary letter that we put on a birth certificate and on legal documents. It's just arbitrary. There's no reason for it. Okay? Zero. It usually is used to indicate gender. Okay? Your gender is female. Okay? Because those two are conflated very often in a legal sense. So, yes. Even if she is not technically medically female, right? You can still assign the F label because that's referring to gender, not sex. Okay, nobody's going to come and do a genital inspection on you or check your chromosomes, which your chromosomes also might not be XX, mind you. Okay, you don't know because you haven't checked them, I bet. So, you know, nobody's going to come and do that. So we're referring to the gender, not the sex, with that F.
All of the characteristics of a male. Forget all of that, right? She might also be closer to female. As long as that little F exists, that's what counts. And it's just so
I mean, if I changed my birth certificate to say that I'm a cat, I wouldn't become a cat.
Just
a piece of paper at the end of the day.
I mean, you have to kind of consider too, like,
he's
how
so smart. That guy's smart.
Not only in Australia, but just across the board.
Cats don't get birth certificates, dipshit. Women do.
You can change these pieces of documentation to reflect a state of being that you don't actually have. Like, female and male are pretty binary.
I love it when they compare trans people to animals. That's really cool of them to do. I love it when they do that.
Designations. You can't just decide that you're going to be one or the other, get your paperwork changed, and then go, look, here. I always think about the example when people say, like,
they don't hate trans people, by the way. They just compare them to animals.
The way that medical staff treat a male or a female is very different because our bodies are different. It's crazy to me that
depends on the medical staff, and trans women still go and get the proper medical care that they need. Okay, and the only people who should be concerned about that is the doctors. That shouldn't be on a legal document. Okay, if you go into the doctor's office and say, hey, there's something wrong with my balls, and you're a trans woman, the doctor should just say, okay, either one, okay, let's take a look, or two, I'm not qualified to deal with that. Those are the two responses. Okay, but only they get to know that. Okay. What's going on down there or genetically is nobody's business but you and your healthcare professionals.
The people are acting as if we're just, all gray amoeba people walking around exactly the same biologically. It's just madness.
Yeah, when
on
I
some
first
scales, it might as well
the
be the
idea
same.
of trans, I was in college, and they said, well, sex is different from gender, right? People have a sex,
True.
but then they have this gender identity.
Yeah, and sometimes we conflate the two legally, yes.
And some people want to live the world as if they're the other sex and they identify with this other gender. But now it's just like, no, sex is just also gender and it's all just made up and it's whatever you say it is.
These people have no concept of, this is a big word game to them. And they do have a concept of how definitions change in different contexts, how the definitions of words change in different contexts. They have a concept of that, but they don't care because it's all just transphobia. It's all just transphobia. The only thing that aligns any of what they're saying together is transphobia. That explains all of their behavior and everything that they want.
And I think that's a really unfortunate thing for them to be pushing, because no one's really ever going to buy that, no matter what legal documents they change. Everyone with common sense.
Why do legal documents need to have my assigned sex on them? Why? Just take it off.
Knows
There's no reason
biological sex exists,
literally no reason
and
for
knows
it.
that a trans woman, I've always been perfectly happy for them to live however they want, but they're still a biological male. I mean, I'm not going to suddenly start denying that. It's like the Orwell scene with, am I holding up 5 fingers? Or
did you do the chromosome test on them? Did you check their genitals? Are you going to check their genitals? Is that what you're going to do? You're going to ask them to show dick? Show dick or GTFO?
Fingers, and they keep making you repeat it over and over again until you admit the wrong answer is actually the truth. I don't think most people will do that. But I guess, Sydney, you
know what a normal thing to do is? Go up to somebody and say, hey, you're a woman. And then they say, no, I'm actually a man. And then you say, no, you're a woman. And I can prove it. And if you're not a woman, well, show me your genitals. That's a really normal standard thing to do, is go up to people and demand to see their genitals if they disagree. I've done that to people before. That's a very normal thing to do.
For listeners who are kind of curious about this stuff, because it gets a lot of clicks, it gets a lot of attention.
I don't want to know what you're curious about. You're curious about people's genitals.
Right? That just the idea of female-only spaces and something like an app for social clubs or something like that. What's the actual significance of this that makes it a pressing priority rather than just kind of a sensational culture war item?
Well, I think the first thing is that, and I'm sure that you agree with this, you have women and men who are entitled to their own spaces free of the other sex. Like that is one basis.
Nobody ever complains about women going into the men's locker room or trans men being in the men's locker room. I don't ever see people complaining about that.
Is here that I think
spare me this
people
bullshit.
Don't pay enough attention to is that you are actually entitled to be around your own sex if you so desire without the other sex present.
I disagree. What the is that? What? No, I disagree with that entirely. No. You don't have that right. That's a stupid right. You're stupid for thinking that. You're a dumbass.
Discriminatory. I don't think it is, because as long as there's...
You can't possibly know somebody else's sex, okay? And the only way to verify that is by checking genitals or doing a gene swab. And sometimes even that's not enough, okay? Because there's a lot of elements to sex, all right? But those are the two main ways that you would do it. And I don't believe that that's like, people have the right to see what my genitals are or do a gene swab on me. They don't get that information, sorry.
Other public spaces where everyone can be together, fine, fair enough. But if you want to have a Boy Scouts that's just for Boy Scouts, go right on ahead and do that.
I disagree.
So that's number one. Number two is that when you have...
How are you going to verify that, right? How are you going to verify that? You going to do a dick check? Huh? You're going to tell the Boy Scouts you're going to do a dick check? Is that what you're going to do? That's weird. That's disgusting. That's actually perverted.
Of legislators determining that women aren't entitled to those single sex spaces.
They want to know what your genitals look like.
That's a massive problem in the long run, because it means that should you just identify as a female or as a woman, you would now have access to all of these women who don't want you in their space. So really what you're doing is you're over...
Based on what? On the fact that they think this person has a penis. They would have to verify that. How do you verify that? You don't even have the right to know yourself. I tried to ask for a test at the hospital and they refused me. Jeez. Not even the doctors want to know? Yeah.
Overriding the rights of an entire sex so that...
My state allows a genital check by coaches? That's disgusting and makes me want to retch, actually.
A handful of people can feel comfortable and...
No. You're saying that they have the right to not be around men. I'm telling you that they only have that right if they don't want to be around anybody. Like, when you're in public, you're going to be around men. I'm sorry, that's just the bottom line. If you're in a public space, you are going to be around men. I think that there is a problem with men being in the same spaces as women, and that there is a good element at this point in time to have a separate space for women. But I also think that trans women should be included in that, because trans women are taken advantage of by women, by men as well, okay? They're also women. So they have a right to be in those spaces. And if a space cannot accommodate trans people, then the space does not deserve to exist.
Safe and included and whatnot. And so this is broader than just this culture wars. Oh, it's on the internet, everyone's arguing on Twitter. That's not the basis of the issue. It's not just this thing that we can talk about on the internet.
And here's another thing. Like, let's say that somebody pretends to be a trans woman, like this guy pretends to be a trans woman to get into the women's space, right? It's not going to last long. That dude's going to do something up that even if a woman were to do it, they would get in trouble, okay? And banned from the space probably. So, like, it's more likely for a man to do it, but trans women aren't men, they're women. And there's no data that shows that trans women have the same crime statistics or proclivity for sexual misconduct as men do. There's no data to back that up, none.
and cry about on the internet and know it goes away. It has actual far-reaching ramifications. This will probably inform other legislation in Australia. This will probably inform other legal cases in Australia. And basically it determines that woman and female don't really have any meaning. I mean, again, you have a judge who just said that basically sex is changeable. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's not.
No, it's not.
Never
It happens.
an understanding that we have had in the.
Also, we're doing like uterus implants. You guys want to see? Penn uterus transplant program. Ooh, here we go. Penn Medicine's uterus transplantation for uterine factor and fertility. Okay, so this is from one cis woman to another cis woman, but still. The first uterus transplant of a transgender woman is very likely in the near future. Although the investigators of this Inklings believe that the UTX should not be restricted to only to women assigned as genetic females at birth, we would also strongly state that TG-UTX, as with all UTX, is, which I believe is uterine transplant, is best performed by well-established teams at experienced centers, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I get that. What are they going to say when we do uterus transplants? We already have vaginoplasty. We already have the other one. I'm just curious what they would say.
In the entirety of the existence of humans. We have never abided by that. And suddenly that's the case. And this is why this is such a landmark issue, and why this case is such a landmark issue.
Yeah, and I think people would be mistaken if they think this is really about the
That was an appeal to a tradition, by the way.
app, right? This is just some random app.
We've never done that.
It's not really about that.
It's not.
I don't care.
The ramifications of this,
we can do it now.
You end up with things like biological males in female prisons,
thank you.
Going on to forcibly impregnate people or women in the prison. It's like,
okay, that's a problem with rape in prison, a problem that you don't actually care about because you're a disgusting piece of shit. You don't want to fix rape in prison.
Once you erode these sex-based
you just want
barriers,
it to be condensed
there
to
are
only
much
men's
more
prisons.
serious ramifications than just a dating app. And we're seeing this with...
This is what transphobes do. They hide behind other issues like little pussies. You don't care about rape in prison. You never have, and you don't, okay? You are a transphobe. Trans people do not commit at higher rates than other women in prisons. They don't, okay? They don't do it. So I'm sorry. Like, this is a fake issue. If anything, they're way more dangerous. They're in a way more dangerous situation in a men's prison. Like, it's way more likely that a trans woman gets raped in a men's prison than it is that they go on to rape in a woman's prison. The converse is way more likely, the inverse. So you don't care about rape in prison. You don't care if that trans person goes to a men's prison and then gets assaulted. You don't give a single solitary spare me the bullshit. You are disgusting. Absolutely
high-level
abhorrent.
Sport and women having opportunities taken away from them by biologically male athletes.
This is okay. So yeah, we're gonna put the issue right next to, you know, medals in a race. Got it. Another thing that you definitely care about.
But yes, we're also seeing this in the literal prison system, which endangers the physical
safety.
Show
me the trans gold medalists.
And I also think.
And by the way, let's say you could show me the trans gold medalists. That's what I say. Trans people deserve to win too.
That it is ironic to me to hear in this news package Tickle talk about the adversity that one faces as a trans woman, because I think this kind of thing is like, if I was trying to design a way to make trans acceptance go down.
Sydney Watson knows this. I know she knows this. She's a disgusting, dishonest piece of shit, as are they both. They both know these things. They just hate trans people. They just hate trans people. That's all it is. That's all it ever will be. They don't care about women. They just hate trans people.
Or make backlash. Say that I was like a hardcore Christian and I was like, what can I do to get the LGBTs back stigmatized by society again? I'd come up with something like this, right? And yet, so you have them simultaneously playing the victim because they get backlash.
Disgusting.
While doing things that are pulling totally out all the unnecessary. Stops. This
trans
person could have just gone about their life and moved on and gone to a different app where they were welcome. Doing things that are totally unnecessary to antagonize vulnerable groups like females, who many people who would seek out something like this, it's because they've had some sort of bad experience with males, right?
Me, when I go on HRT, since I was like 13 years old, in order to, you know, completely change my body because I feel like a woman, to get back at those stinky women. Me, when I uproot my entire livelihood and make my entire family disown me and shame me. Me, when I have no friends because of my identity. Me, when I have problems finding work, getting into colleges potentially, got excommunicated from my church possibly, you know, like at way higher risk of things that happen to cis women as well, which is not good. Me, when I do all of that, just because I hate women so damn much. I hate women so much that I'm going to pretend to be one. True. This happens, guys. This is a real thing that happens. This is very true.
That's part of it for some of them. And to do something that the public isn't going to like and just bring upon more backlash to you, but then that backlash is more proof of your own victimhood. It's kind of a vicious cycle.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Me sustaining backlash, like, you know, a higher rate of being murdered. And that feeds back into me wanting to be even more trans, actually.
And you bring up such a good point with the males in female prisons. That's becoming, I mean, it already was an issue, but it's becoming an even bigger issue because with self-identification.
It's really not an issue.
That's happening in America too.
Oh, big time. I mean, California is one of the biggest places where this is going on.
Trans women in men's prisons is the bigger issue. They get sexually assaulted way more often.
Washington State is another one where it's huge. New Jersey is another one where it's huge. I mean, you hear about all these horrible, horrible stories, and the women in the prisons. And I know this is, you know, sort of adjacent to the tickle issue, but it's so ridiculous to say like
tickle versus giggle is a bizarre name.
It's so silly. But I know that this is like I said, a little adjacent, but you have women who are actually being told that they can't say anything or speak out and are being shamed into silence. They're already in.
That's another thing that people who are like this love to do is say like, well, everybody thinks this. They're just being shamed into silence. No, you're just the minority. Shut the f up and go home. Nobody likes you. Well, other people are just being quiet about. No, they're not.
You know, kind of a pretty precarious.
You are all loud and annoying as
because most women who are in prison are not there for violent
go
crime.
piss
They're
on
there for drug
it.
offenses or prostitution, usually like low-level crimes that have shorter prison sentences anyway. And then you introduce these men, a lot of whom have violent histories, and we're supposed to just sit back and be like, oh yeah, this is normal. And then on top of that, tell those women that they can't have.
Where do cis women go when they have violent histories? If you can't accommodate trans women in a space, the space does not deserve to exist.
It's like as a woman watching all of this unfold, I'm actually very distressed because I can see how much we are accelerating with this stupidity.
Where do female rapists
and how
go?
much we're accelerating towards, I think, things that are going to be considerably worse than where we're at now.
That's a great question. I want to know, where do people who were assigned female at birth, if they are, where do they go? Where do they go? Do they go to the men's prison? No. Oh, they go to the women's prison, even though they're at a higher likelihood of raping the women there because they're a convicted, which does happen way less frequently than men, but it does happen. So if you're assigned female at birth and you go to the women's prison when you rape somebody, if you're assigned male at birth and you're a trans woman and you rape somebody, you should also go to the women's prison because you're a woman, a disgusting, perverted woman who raped somebody.
Now, and I'm distressed and upset that legislators, that people in the judicial system don't have our back. Like they don't have our back at all, and
they don't care about in prisons. They don't
having this much disdain for women that you would undermine our rights and freedoms and security all the time
while calling yourself a feminist. It really. All right, Sydney. Well, thanks for your perspective on this.
I hate everything
Folks should
about
check out your YouTube channel for more, which I will link to. And thanks for coming back on this show.
Thank you for having me.
So now, guys, I got to bring you an update on that story we covered a couple of weeks ago out of Surprise, Arizona.
Should we keep going or should we just end it there? Did on Arizona freeze peach case? Yeah, I think we'll end it there. That was the entire segment. Oh, yeah. That was rough. That was a rough one. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you want to see more, hit the notification bell to be notified when I upload. If you enjoy my content, you enjoy what I do, I really appreciate any financial help that I can get. Go to youtube.com/AlecGunterTTV/join. You got some awesome benefits, such as seeing early videos, awesome emotes that you can use in the comments of YouTube videos, and a sweet badge next to your name. So if that sounds interesting to you, I'd really appreciate if you join. It is cheaper than the cost of a blowjob from your mom. So with all that being said, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.